Well, hello everybody. It's nice to be talking to you. My name's Dennis Smith and I was editor of Current Sociology between 2002 and 2010. Since doing that, I've become an emeritus professor at Loughborough University, and now I'm a full-time freelance researcher, which suits me just fine. I'm at Loughborough University, did I say that? Eloisa Martin asked me to record a few thoughts on being editor. She of course is the current editor, and I think I'd like to start with the big picture, and mention that when I became editor of Current Sociology in 2002, it was just about a year after the 9/11 events, which you'll remember involved the bombing of basically the bombing of the two towers in New York. And I was doing this job until 2010, which was included the beginning of the credit crunch, and I finished just before the Arab Spring sprang. And this, I think, was a tremendously exciting time to be editing a global sociology journal with a global editorial board and global contributors and referees drawn from all over the world, because the global political framework was fundamentally shaken in these years, and this posed a tremendous challenge to old assumptions about the way the world worked. It was a decisive break with the 1990s, when for some years, for a few years at least, it seemed as if there was a settled Pax Americana, and there was a great deal of emphasis upon neoliberal approaches and the implementation of the so-called Washington Consensus. But that all was being shaken up, and it still is, and we're not at all sure where it's going. But it was at the beginning of this period that Christine Inglis, who was the Vice President of Publications of the International Sociological Association, of course Current Sociology, which is here, is one of the two main journals that the ISA produces. Christine was doing a world tour looking at potential editors, and she arrived in Loughborough and explained to me, because I'd applied for this role, and she explained to me how intellectually challenging and exciting it was, and of course it is, and I was fortunate enough to be chosen. Now, although I didn't realise it at the time, it didn't click, 2002 was actually the 50th anniversary of Current Sociology, which was founded in 1952. And the journal is, in a way, both old and young. It's old in the sense that it's been publishing for a long time, but up until 1997 it was a journal that concentrated on producing so-called trend reports. There were a couple of issues every year. They would contain long reviews of the progress of particular areas of sociology, such as rural sociology or industrial sociology and so on. Now this changed in 1997, when the journal became what one might call a normal or regular journal. Susan McDaniel did a brilliant job at being the midwife of this new infant, and she took it through to its kindergarten stage, getting it very soundly and solidly on its way, walking, running around, and I then took it into the journal into its, so to speak, early high school years, and now Eloisa has got the teenager. by 2002, excuse me, by 2002, we were publishing 6 issues a year. Now, 2 of these, as you obviously or probably know, were monograph issues, which had a series of papers with a dedicated editor and a kind of book type production. And the overall editor for the monographs was Julia Everts for all the time that I was there, and can I say that she was an absolute joy to work with. Indeed, we had Current Sociology also had a good team. Karine Vassy and Angel Belderin were brilliant translators from French and Spanish, and I also want to thank the people who gave me help in the secretarial side, especially Anne Smith, who is incidentally no relation. Now, in the first few years, the flow of submissions was still a bit low. We wanted it higher. So one of the ways I handled this was to commission, in response to suggestions coming into me, a series of special issues, no more than 1 a year. We had one on unconventional forms of the family, one on South Africa, one on autonomous sociology, an excellent one by Farid Alatas, and one on the global fashion industry. But by the start of my second 4-year stint or stretch as editor, beginning in 2006, the flow of contributions or freestanding papers was significantly increased, and I stopped commissioning these special issues. One of the questions that came up quite quickly was how current sociology was going to be different from international sociology. In practice, there's some significant overlap between the 2 journals in their content, their themes, and I think it's quite right that editors should have as much freedom as possible to shape a journal within very broad limits, but it's quite reasonable that international sociology should emphasise that it was interested in dealing with the diversity of international sociology, of sociology internationally. I honed in on the term current in our title, and so I have expressed, I think, our mission as being, on the one hand, being interested in papers that made a contribution to current debates, empirical debates, theoretical debates, methodological debates within the discipline of sociology, and at the same time looked at the way that sociology as a discipline could contribute to our understanding and analysis of current issues within global political and socio-economic affairs. And I think we've done that. I mean, one of the things I've deliberately encouraged was dialogue within the pages of current sociology, not necessarily the kind of dialogue that you have to live to 100 to see the end of, because you get a paper in this year, then a reply or a response 3 years later, but dialogues within the pages, within the covers of particular issues. And when I spotted the opportunity to do this, I would get 1 or more people responding to by invitation to a particular challenging piece that came in. So we had dialogues on public sociology, global warming, the history of sociology, cosmopolitanism, the work of Norbert Elias, the professions, postmodern approaches to methods, and a very good one on the role of white trade union organisers in South Africa. Now, all in 8 years, I had about 800 submitted papers. I've not counted them specially for this. And I got referees for most of them. In other words, most of them went through the process. The vast majority, often going outside the editorial board to get specialist experts on the particular field. And of those, perhaps somewhere between a fifth and a sixth, and it got a smaller proportion as the years went on because as the volume increased, were published. And although that meant inevitably a lot of people who were disappointed, they also got very high-grade free consultancy, which is what our refereeing system produces. And indeed, I took a particular approach in the editorial position. I wanted to be both friendly and responsive on the other hand, while also maintaining high professional standards. And that meant mobilising and engaging the generosity of many people who were both highly skilled and very busy as referees. And you need, in doing that, to show a great deal of respect to everybody and maintain a welcoming and friendly atmosphere. Finally, a word about the publishers. The first thing to say is that in my experience, everyone on the publishing side was thoroughly friendly and totally professional. They were very good to deal with. The second thing to say is that ISA's journal editors are in the middle of the relationship between the International Sociological Association and the publishers. And people on both sides of this relationship are trying to fit the journals into their own vision, so to speak. The ISA is trying to develop sociology as a creative professional practice and a critical public practice, and the the publishers are confronted with commercial pressures, and they're bound to see the journals as part of a business that promotes particular brands in order to maximise profits. And editors feel pressures from both these directions, and they have to be strong enough to make their own way through these waves. And it's very important that editors remember that they are the ones that are making the wheels turn week by week, playing midwife to the creation of value in the shape of published articles, and both the ISA and the publishers benefit from that. And I think it's important that bodies such as the International Sociological Association should listen seriously to their editors, perhaps even more than they do now. By and large, editors are not in those positions as a way to make their own fortunes quickly. They are there because they're prepared to give a lot of themselves to develop the intellectual disciplines they love and enjoy. So here's to the editors. Thanks very much for listening.